Abraham Zapruder, a dressmaker, brought his camera to Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963, to see President John F. Kennedy's motorcade pass through the plaza. Zapruder had no idea that he would witness an assassination, or that his home movie would become one of the most watched, examined, and infamous movies ever. Even today, the Zapruder film is used as proof in a wide variety of conspiracies about the assassination of the president. The footage was presented as evidence in the posthumous guilt of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was accused of shooting Kennedy from a window on the 6th story of the Texas School Book Depository. The Warren Commission's report on the assassination, published in 1964, reached the conclusion that Oswald had shot the president from the Texas School Book Depository and acted on his own. But what if Kennedy was shot from behind by someone else, someone close to him, tasked with protecting his life, not taking it? In today's video, we look at a theory that Lee Harvey Oswald perpetrated the JFK assassination, but the kill shot was from a US Secret Service weapon discharged accidentally in the chaos at Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963. Kennedy was fatally shot in the head in broad daylight at 12:30 p.m. while riding in his midnight blue 1961 Lincoln Continental open-top limousine through Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas, despite Secret Service protection. Sitting in front of Kennedy, Governor John Connally sustained multiple non-fatal wounds. Based on the information now available 60 years after the assassination, those investigating President Kennedy's Secret Service protection detail have developed a probable theory about Kennedy's death. In 1992, Bonner Menninger published the book Mortal Error, which propagated the theories of Baltimore gunsmith Howard Donahue, claiming that JFK was killed by an errant bullet from an AR-15 rifle carried by George Hickey, a Secret Service agent who served on Kennedy's detail on the day of his assassination. After taking part in a recreation of the shooting as one of 11 invited marksmen and sharpshooters for a documentary, and proved that Oswald could have discharged 3 bullets within the 5.6-second interval specified by the Warren Commission. He was the only one of 11 to achieve this feat. However, this experience drew Donahue's attention to other issues with the Warren report, notably that ballistics experts' testimony appeared to have been omitted from the Commission's gathering of evidence. According to Donahue's hypothesis, Oswald shot JFK from the Texas School Book Depository, but the fatal bullet that shattered JFK's skull came from an AR-15 rifle that unintentionally discharged during the pandemonium that ensued after Oswald began firing. Donahue proposes the following sequence of events for this theory. Hickey spins around and sees Oswald on the 6th floor of the School Book Depository building after the first shot hits a pavement in front of Kennedy's car. Hickey reaches under the seat for the AR-15, deactivates the safety, and proceeds to raise the weapon. Oswald fires a second shot, which hits the president and Texas Governor Connally. The president's vehicle and the follow car containing Hickey accelerated unexpectedly. Hickey, who is unbalanced because he is standing on the seat cushion rather than the floor of the car, begins to fall back as the vehicle accelerates. This causes Hickey to pull the trigger of the AR-15. At that moment, the weapon is pointed at Kennedy, and the .223 caliber round projectile hits him precisely in the back of the skull, killing him. What evidence has Donahue uncovered to come up with this theory? Assistant Special Agent in charge Emery Roberts assigned the AR-15 to Hickey, a 4-month Secret Service newcomer who had only received training as a driver. The presidential detail was severely understaffed and overworked, but all agents, including driver agents, were rifle-trained. Since rifle and shotgun practice was only held quarterly, Hickey, who had only been on the job for 4 months, may have had only one opportunity to practice with the AR-15 rifle. During his investigation, Donahue discovered that the bullet that hit Kennedy in the head had fragmented into at least 40 fragments, the largest of which was the size of a small fingernail. This form of fragmentation was more typical of AR-15 .223 ammunition than the military-style bullets that Oswald used. In addition, Kennedy's autopsy physician, Dr. Pierre Fink, measured the entrance of the wound at 6 millimeters. Since bullet entrance wounds through bone, such as to Kennedy's skull, always leave larger openings than the projectile's diameter, the entrance wound is consistent with an AR-15 5.5 millimeter round, but incompatible with Oswald's 6.5 millimeter rounds. Examining the president's brain and the edge scrapings from the entrance cavity in the skull would have revealed the type of weapon that caused Kennedy's head trauma, but this evidence disappeared. Donahue also analyzed Warren Commission eyewitness testimony and discovered reports of gunpowder odor near the Secret Service follow-up vehicle in the motorcade, even though the wind direction would have prevented gun smoke from the sniper's nest from reaching them. 20 witness testimonies exist, including Senator Yarborough, who stated that the odor followed the motorcade to Parkland Hospital. Yarborough told reporters outside of Parkland Hospital following the assassination that the third shot may have been a Secret Service agent returning fire, and that he witnessed a Secret Service agent beating his fists against the side of the president's car, presumably in frustration, anger, and despair. Although this hypothesis mistakenly assigns responsibility to Hickey, Menninger quoted Donahue as saying, "I do not believe George Hickey is to blame for what happened. He was a brave man trying to do his job. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and fate stepped in. That's all." Donahue also said that Hickey showed a great deal of courage and nerve to stand up during an ambush and try to return fire. And what happened to the AR-15 responsible for the fatal headshot? Some authors assert that the weapon was promptly withdrawn or retired from use by the Secret Service following the assassination. According to Donahue, at the center of the so-called accident theory is an ordinary Secret Service agent, not mafia bosses, Soviet proxies, or an ambitious vice president. "It's not sexy, it's not rife with intrigue," Menninger said, "but for that reason, in my mind, it's extremely compelling, because it's the only theory that hews tightly to the available evidence." Although Donahue's theory adds a new facet to the Kennedy mystery, it is improbable that the president was killed in an accident. According to lifelong Kennedy investigators, this theory holds no water, except for one glaring point. JFK's security was inadequate, bordering on negligent. The protection was so inadequate that it raised the risk of a successful assassination plot involving one or more concealed assassins firing at the presidential limousine. This Secret Service negligence contributed to the assassination by making the murder of Kennedy less complicated and the assassin's unnoticed escape more probable. Many authors and a senator who saw the assassination firsthand have questioned why the Secret Service's actions before, during, and after the assassination were out of character and, to put it plainly, amateur. Authors James P. Duffy and Vincent L. Ritchie said, "The poor performance of the president's bodyguards has led some people to suspect the Secret Service was somehow involved in a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, although there has never been any proof that this was so." Just how bad was their neglect and mediocre performance? So bad that they have been thrown into the ever-growing pile of conspiracy theories. In 1979, after a 2-year reinvestigation of the assassination, the U.S. House of Representatives Select Committee on Assassinations issued a final report concluding that the Secret Service was deficient in the performance of its duties. This marked the beginning of a growing consensus that JFK's protection was seriously flawed. The findings of the Assassinations Committee were: Secret Service agents in the motorcade were inadequately prepared to protect the president from a sniper. In the physical protection of the president, there was a failure to arrange for prior inspection of buildings along the motorcade route. Due to Secret Service directives, escort security for the presidential limousine during the Dallas motorcade may have been uniquely insecure. The day before the Dallas visit, at a meeting with local police officials to finalize the arrangements for the motorcade, the Secret Service oddly ordered a reduction of security of protection in terms of the number and placement of Dallas police officers who would escort the limousine during the motorcade through the city. The consensus that the Secret Service was negligent in its duties is supported by a wealth of information from previously redacted files and research that confirms the conclusion reached by the House Assassinations Committee. In the months preceding the assassination, the Secret Service became aware of multiple assassination plots against JFK. However, the public did not learn of this shocking fact until years after the Warren Commission's official investigation. More than 6 months before the assassination, the Secret Service received a warning postcard in March 1963 that JFK would be assassinated while riding in a motorcade. In October 1963, the Secret Service heard allegations of one or more conspiracies to assassinate JFK with high-powered rifles during a November 2nd visit to Chicago. This visit was postponed at the 11th hour. On November 9, 1963, a violent racist provocateur named Joseph Adams Miltier had a prolonged conversation with a man named Willie Somerset in a Miami hotel room, during which Miltier warned Somerset of a conspiracy to assassinate Kennedy. Unbeknownst to Miltier, Somerset was recording the conversation as a police informant. The transcript of this taped conversation reveals that Miltier told Somerset that the assassination of Kennedy was in the working, that the president could be killed from an office building with a high-powered rifle, that the rifle could be disassembled to get it into the building, and they will pick up somebody within hours afterward if anything like that would happen, just to throw the public off. Sound familiar? Somerset promptly gave the tape recording to local Miami police, who immediately passed it on to the Secret Service and FBI. The Miami field office of the Secret Service compiled a dossier titled "Alleged Possible Threat Against the President" on Miltier following a hasty investigation that did not include an interview with him. The Secret Service officials responsible for the travel to and in Dallas were not informed about the conspiracy Miltier spoke about. We now know that the assassination of JFK in Dallas occurred against the backdrop of several assassination plots, of which the Secret Service was fully aware. In his book, Brothers: The Hidden History of the Kennedy Years, David Talbot writes, Kennedy was, in fact, being methodically stalked in the final weeks of his life. Given that the Secret Service must have recognized that JFK was in a dangerous situation on November 22, 1963, it is puzzling that he received inadequate protection. Why, for instance, did the Secret Service authorize 2 extremely unusually sharp turns for the motorcade in Dealey Plaza? And why was the limousine traveling at an extremely low speed of only 11.2 miles per hour when it was fired upon? Most Secret Service agents in the motorcade performed inadequately when the shots started. The driver of the presidential limousine did not accelerate when the gunfire began. Instead, he hesitated, applying the limousine's brakes and slowing down to where many Dealey Plaza witnesses believed the vehicle had stopped just before the fatal headshot was fired. Contrary to Secret Service procedures, the agent in the right front seat made no attempt to move to the president and shield him. The agent standing on the vehicle's running board that tailed Kennedy's limousine 5 feet away also appeared confused. They stood there doing nothing after hearing gunfire, while JFK visibly reacted to his gunshot wounds. Some looked at him indifferently, while others turned to look in the direction of the first shot. Senator Yarborough, an eyewitness to the assassination, reported to the Warren Commission, "All of the Secret Service agents seemed to me to respond very slowly, with no more than a puzzled look. I am amazed at the lack of instantaneous response by the Secret Service when the rifle fire began." Somewhere along the line, writes James Hepburn, the pseudonym of a French intelligence service official in his book Farewell America, the agents guarding JFK had neglected the first rule of security. They had lost their reflexes. This may have been due to alcohol consumption, sleep deprivation, and fatigue. In flagrant violation of Secret Service regulations, 9 agents, including 4 in a follow-up vehicle, were out drinking the night before the assassination. In addition, 6 of the 9 agents remained out until approximately 3 a.m., while the 7th agent did not return to his room until 5 a.m. Despite multiple reports of nefarious plots to assassinate the president in his limousine, agents drank and partied late into the night before a hazardous trip to Dallas. The status of Hickey as an accidental suspect in the Kennedy assassination has been characterized as consistent with ballistics. The hypothesis presented in the book Mortal Error is only consistent with the ballistic evidence in the JFK case, as the book contends that any AR-15 ammunition disintegrated while penetrating JFK's skull and left no tangible traces of its existence. In this sense, Mortal Error's theory about Hickey's magically disappearing AR-15 ammunition is as consistent as some of the more wacky theories floating around the conspiracy realm. There is no credibility to a theory based on missing or disintegrated evidence. The best evidence refuting this theory comes from someone who was actually in the firing line. Many have also wondered how Hickey could have fired an AR-15 rifle in a congested public location without anyone seeing or hearing it. David Powers, an aide to Kennedy, was traveling in the vehicle behind JFK, but he never heard Hickey or anyone else in the motorcade fire a gun. According to Powers, as quoted in the book Mortal Error, "Someone a foot away from me or 2 feet away from me couldn't fire a gun without me hearing it." Given that Hickey was within 2 feet of Powers, it is evident that he could not have discharged the rifle. The second chapter of the Warren Commission's report on the Kennedy assassination includes a brief mention of Hickey. Special Agent George W. Hickey, Jr., in the rear seat of the presidential follow-up car, picked up and cocked an automatic rifle as he heard the last shot. At this point, the cars were speeding through the underpass and had left the scene of the shooting, but Hickey kept the automatic weapon ready as the car raced to the hospital. In 1992, when Mortal Error was released, Hickey was still alive and able to defend himself. In 1996, Hickey retained an attorney who filed libel litigation against the book's publisher, St. Martin's Press. Initially, St. Martin's Press obtained the dismissal of the libel suit on technical grounds, as Hickey had filed after the statute of limitations for defamation claims in his native state of Maryland. Lawyers then filed an appeal, persuading St. Martin's Press to grant Hickey an undisclosed financial settlement. Hickey died in 2011. Please comment below if you think this theory might be plausible, or is it a case of yet another crackpot conspiracy aimed at muddying the waters of the JFK assassination? If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.